This is a special edition of WeatherScope, live coverage of Winter Storm 96.
Another snowstorm rolls up the eastern seaboard, but unlike the blizzard of 96, the snowfall amounts will not be nearly as prolific, and we're going to have a lot of ice thrown into the equation here, and some serious problems developing, especially in the Carolina Piedmonts. Take a look at the satellite loop tonight, and once again, much like last week, we can find that storm very easily. A spin right here on the Gulf coastal states. That's the low pressure now moving from Birmingham towards Atlanta. We'll scoot up the eastern seaboard. It's going to be closer to the coast, so we're almost guaranteed that we will have a changeover from snow to sleet, freezing rain, or rain in the big cities, including Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. And speaking of Philadelphia, Bill Keneely now joins us live from the city of brotherly love, where they're anticipating the next winter weather event. Bill?
Mike, so far so good. No snow as of yet, and hopefully no transition over to freezing rain or sleet later on. We're here in Philadelphia, just to the northwest of the downtown area. Looking back from the Ben Franklin Parkway, the Philadelphia Museum of Art is behind me, and once again, incredible amounts of snow on the walkway here. If you remember the movies Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's about 50 steps at least, and there's enough snow now that we had a whole bunch of ardent sledders out here tonight, braving the cold and the increasing wind.
How is the city doing following the blizzard? Is the cleanup continuing? Have they gotten back to normal in lieu that another storm is right on its heels tomorrow morning?
Well, Mike, already the schools have been shut down for Friday. The mayor declared that earlier today. Now, there still are some spot shortages of food, and the firefighting efforts are being hampered quite a bit here as the lanes are very, very narrow, and in some cases the side streets have not been plowed. The good news is the meter readers are being very lenient, as parking is definitely at a premium. One of the articles in the paper today said maybe no good parking situation possibly until opening day for the Phillies in early April.
That's a very good point, because although the snow will not come down certainly in the amounts that we had earlier in the week, temperatures are going to stay cold behind the storm even into the extended forecast, as we'll show our viewers in a minute in Philadelphia, and that snow is not going to be melting anytime soon.
That's right, Mike. Again, you talk about snow, possibly over to freezing rain and sleet. The other big concern, maybe not so much in the city, but out in the suburban areas with the flat roofs, and especially in the schools, they're very worried. They've had a lot of leaks springing up today. It got a little bit warmer as the sun helped to melt a little bit, but again, that weight of snow and then freezing rain and sleet could be a big, big burden on the roofs.
Okay, Bill, we'll watch that very closely as the precipitation moves into Philadelphia by sunrise tomorrow morning. We want to move to the Midwest, where it's been snowing throughout the afternoon, but the main storm track will remain up the eastern seaboard. As far as snow goes, it was snowing in Chicago and Minneapolis through the afternoon, and that storm actually is going to be the weaker of the two. The main storm will come up the eastern seaboard. Now, this is the storm track from the blizzard of 96 coming up towards Norfolk and Salisbury, then pulling away from the coast. This one will hug the coast. It won't be as strong, so the snowfall amounts will be less, but because it's closer to the coast, warmer air will get in at cloud level, and from Raleigh and Charlotte into Richmond, Wilmington, Philadelphia, New York City, and even Boston, we're going to have a changeover from snow to some other form of precipitation. Whether it goes all over to rain or to some sleet and freezing rain in the northeast remains to be seen. That's because the high is receding. The air mass is not quite as cold, so coastal areas will warm up. You can see the arrows coming in from the Atlantic. Water temperatures are in the 40s, even over the Gulf Stream, still near 70 around Cape Hatteras. So that warm air will come on in, and much like we saw Norfolk and Salisbury, the big cities will change over from snow sometime during the event. Still a lot of snow on the ground, a huge snowpack. That acts as a refrigerant, and that keeps the ground very cold and leads to the risk of ice. And there is an ice storm warning up tonight for the Raleigh-Durham area, where you could get significant accumulations of ice, and that would mean the risk of power lines and trees coming down on power lines and the loss of your electricity. In Chicago, though, it has been snowfall. It has been coming down since earlier today. Snowfall continuing in those areas, and there's our plows moving up the streets in the Windy City. This lady coming around the curve and losing her back end. Again, if you don't have front wheel or four-wheel drive or chains on, the best bet is to wait until those roads are cleared. Of course, you got to get out there and get the milk, the bread, and the toilet paper. That's always certainly a mainstay of shopping before a big snowstorm. In Columbus today, too, a couple of inches of snow has come down, a couple more likely tonight, so not as much as you had earlier in the week, but almost a foot now on the ground in central sections of Ohio, as that snow will taper off tomorrow. But it is going to stay cold anywhere it's been snowing, so the snow is not going to be melting. Here's our double-barreled area of storminess. This one will be the weaker of the two storms. This storm in the Gulf Coast will be the main storm. It will take a very similar track, basically like this, but because it's going to be close to the coast, the big cities, Philadelphia, New York, up to Boston, it's not going to be an entire snow event. And because the storm is moving quicker and also the storm is weaker, snowfall amounts will not hit 3 to 4 feet like we saw in parts of the Appalachians. But the Appalachians are favored all the way back through the mountains of North Carolina. Again, Roanoke, some snow, western Maryland, Garrett County, the Poconos, the Catskills, and into the Berkshires. This whole area here will get a foot or more of snowfall. Lighter accumulations near the coast because of that changeover. And again, this storm is just not as powerful as the previous one. As far as the snowfall goes, there you have it, all the way from Roanoke and into the Shenandoah Valley. West of there, a foot or more is possible. New York City and Philadelphia, we're looking at generally 3 to 6 inches of snow before a changeover. And again, in the Carolina Piedmonts, Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte, and Greenville, Spartanburg, watch out for ice on the highways and on the power lines tonight and tomorrow. We'll watch it for you. We'll have continuing live coverage from New York and Philadelphia. Now with the rest of the current weather and your forecast for your weekend, here's Dave Schwartz.
Thanks, Mike. That was pretty good news. The storm weaker than the last one, more fast.
This is a special edition of WeatherScope, live coverage of Winter Storm 96.
Round 2, another snowstorm, and this time, unfortunately, an ice storm moving up the eastern seaboard. Thanks for tuning into the Weather Channel. I'm Mike Seidel here in the Forecast Center from Atlanta, and we're watching another situation which is going to cause some serious problems. No, this is not going to be another blizzard of 96. The snowfall totals will be less, but there will be additional problems for some of you out there watching. Let's go right to the satellite loop, and here we go. Another spin in the atmosphere, a storm now cranking up through the southern states between Birmingham and Atlanta, and that's going to shoot off to the northeast, interact with Atlantic moisture back into the cold air, cold enough for snow, at least at the onset, and voila, we get another coastal snowstorm. But again, the seriousness of this is not as bad as it was just a few days ago in many areas of the Northeast. But the Northeast is still under a good 20 to 25 inches of snowfall, and in the midst of the snowdrifts in New York City, our very own Jill Brown. Jill, what's the latest?
Well, Mike, things are certainly a little bit different here than last time you heard from us a couple of days ago. We're at least back down to pavement now in Central Park West, and as you can see, plenty of traffic out there this evening. That was a problem earlier because you can see that we have plenty of snow left here in Manhattan, and it's taking up a lot more space than what we'd like to see, taking up parking spaces in some of the lanes on the roadways. Some of the drifts are piles made by the snowplow are 20 feet high. So that was a real problem about the time of rush hour traffic. The rail line's not quite back to normal yet, but they've been doing a pretty good job, and things are certainly on their way to getting back to normal.
Jill, what do the locals have to look forward to with this new storm moving in for rush hour tomorrow morning in the tri-state area?
Well, probably one of the biggest problems here is that things aren't quite back to normal. They need a few more days to just kind of clean up from the last storm. Sanitation department's been working on overdrive. They've had all of their people in, no vacation time. They've been working all night long. They haven't been able to pick up the trash because they've been trying to get all that snow and dump it in the river. So they're already behind. This is just going to add to the problems. Now, of course, we won't get that much snow here, but if we start getting rain or freezing rain, that could have had a whole new dimension. Freezing rain, of course, could mean more problems at the airports, and with the traffic, of course, could be a real headache again, which anyone who's visiting from out of town doesn't want to see that. We've already been stuck here long enough. I think a lot of people are ready to get out of town.
You included, right, Jill?
Yes, I think we're about ready to leave this town.
Okay, Jill. Jill Brown live from New York City. She'll be covering the storm from that aspect throughout tonight and tomorrow and into the weekend. It was snowing today in another city, the windy city of Chicago. Those of you in the Midwest have missed out on the big blizzard, but it was snowing earlier, and so far 4 inches officially at O'Hare Airport. This lady comes around the corner and loses the back end there as she slips and slides down the street. Again, if you don't have front wheel or four wheel or chains, best bet is to stay off the highways. But if you have to get out to the grocery and pick up the milk and the bread, well, you have to do those kind of things. Kind of a slushy, wet snow in Chicagoland. It's over with now, but it will be cold for the remainder of the weekend into next week. Same goes for Columbus. Big snows earlier in the week, about 10 inches. So far tonight, you've picked up a couple of inches today and tonight, and we're not looking for much more in the way of accumulation. A couple of more inches, that's about it. People out there getting along, spreading the salt. Sidewalks still a little icy and slippery. But again, the worst of the storm this time around will be in the Appalachians. The track basically the same, but there are differences. Let's go to the track here. And this is the blizzard of 96 track extending up towards the Virginia Capes. Then it hooked away from the coast. This track will be closer. So for those of you in Philly and New York and Boston, you're going to get more of that warming influence from the Atlantic, so you may change even over to rain, but certainly it will not be entirely a snowfall event. You will have snow at the onset, and it may come down hard at least for several hours before we have a changeover or mixing. The reason why is not only is the storm track closer, but the high is weaker. It's pulling away. The air mass in place now is certainly cold, but it's not as cold as the blizzard's air mass before it came up the coast. Moisture is going to come in, but that warmer air coming into the cloud level where the precipitation is actually made will cause a problem, because it may start off as a snowflake, but it will melt, change to a raindrop, come down to the ground, and temperatures at the ground are going to be below freezing, especially through the Carolina Piedmonts up to Richmond. That's where we have the problem with ice, and we could have a significant accumulation of ice. One of the reasons it's so cold is we've got that snowpack. Many places still running a good 2 feet deep. That acts as a refrigerant, and as a result, we get the cold surface temperatures, and as long as your temperature is below freezing at the ground, whatever falls will freeze, whether it's a snowflake or a raindrop. Tonight, though, most of what's falling is either snow or rain. We haven't seen the freezing rain kick in yet, but that will, especially anywhere from the upstate of South Carolina. These areas, which are favored for freezing rain, from Greenville right up through Raleigh and Richmond, watch out. This could be a real treacherous zone tomorrow. Probably forget traveling. Watch out for maybe even power lines and trees coming down over power lines, cutting off your electricity. Right now, though, it's snowing in the upstate of South Carolina around Greenville and Anderson. Snow moving into Charlotte, but again, as warmer air begins to come in off the Atlantic, we should see a changeover, especially in these areas. Even in the big cities of the Northeast, we're expecting this not to be all snow. And the bottom line here is the snowfall amounts will not be as high as they were with a blizzard. Of course, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event. You can see here through the mountains from the Shenandoah Valley up towards Garrett County in western Maryland, a good 6 to 12. A few spots may get more, but for the cities, D.C., Baltimore, into Philly and New York, a general forecast, a good forecast for this event would be 3 to 6 inches, and then maybe a changeover to some sleet or freezing rain, or even just rain before the event ends. It's going to be a quick mover, so it's going to be, well, not painless, but a lot less painful than the blizzard was earlier in the week. And we'll be following it for you here at the Weather Channel. Thanks for watching. We've got the rest of the weather now and your forecast for the weekend. Here's Dave Schwartz.